Hey, welcome to the Eyes on Jesus podcast. I'm Drew. I'm here with Tim. Tim, what's up, man?
What is up? Good to be here as always.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Today we have a great topic for you, and this actually came in from Facebook. It was one of our comments.
Yeah,
and Michael. So shout out to Michael. Way to go on dating your spouse, and how do you do that? And
should you do it?
And should you do it? And how do you really, how do you really have a great marriage, but also in the busyness of your schedule? Like, how important is having a date night? How do you plan those things out? And then, as you're planning those out, like, how does it not become just something you do and another thing, and then now it's an obligation and all these things? So we're going to talk through a lot of different layers of that and get into a lot. But before we do, what's something right now you're really thankful for, Tim?
Oh man, I am thankful for just the basic stuff, health, family, just a good season of life where things kind of are, firing together. My wife and I in ministry together, love doing that with her, love seeing how God's using her giftings. And for me, like, I'm just excited to keep pursuing God. And that's kind of a road answer, but I think it's really an adventure with God when you see that, like, all right, God, what's going on today? Like, what can we do? How can you use me? Like, it's exciting, and you kind of have to fight against the roteness of life when it's just like rinse and repeat. I've been in those cycles too, where it's just wake up, go to work, come back, maybe have an hour of free time / time with my spouse, and then just rinse and repeat, do it all again. And so, I think when we talk about marriage, there's going to be seasons of life that have different strategies. But I think there's also some wisdom to be had that we can see from the Bible, from our personal experiences as well on marriage. And before we get that deep topic, I want to confess something. So
all right,
I am a sucker for Facebook advertisements.
Okay.
So I was a marketing major, and I love marketing. And I feel like there's a new level of advertisements when they know what you want, and they know how to put it on your feed so that you see it.
Yep.
And they know that it's just a click away. You get to try this new thing. And so I just tend to click buy, man, on Facebook when I see this new shirt that someone's wearing and it looks awesome and they're pulling on it. And it's like, oh, check out this new material. It's so cool. And then I buy the shirt, and I'm usually a large or extra large, and I buy the extra large, and it comes and fits me like a small because it came from China. And I'm just like, buyer's remorse. Yeah. I also bought from a company that was like a startup company, brand new website, not a real company, but they had an advertisement, and then the company's not real. They take your money, and then they never send you the product. I also bought like these hint drinks, which I don't mind hint water, but it's like, a 36 pack for $36. It's $1 a piece. These are normally $1.50 in the store. So I just buy it. And then now I have all this hint water. I just got these new supplements from Old School Labs, and they had a picture of this guy that's like an old school guy from the 70s, 80s. And I was like, oh, I like the fact it's called Old School. I'm going to buy your supplements. I need some protein powder. So let's see what you got. So that just came in yesterday. I'll see how it is. I'll let you know. I mean, that's just kind of like my life right now. And my wife's listening to this and just rolling her eyes, I'm sure, because I am just a complete sucker for the thing, whatever it is. Shark Tank's another one. I love this show. My wife and I watch it together. And there's this new thing they have every time. And it's like, oh, this new thing fixes a problem in your life. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that and make $1 million? I can't think of that stuff. So I'll just buy your thing and then get that in as well. So
That's it. Well, anyway, you're rolling. I love it. I feel
so much better now. I got that
Good.
off my chest.
I'm glad you got that off your chest. Facebook is really up in the ad game. Like, I don't know if that's just me, but literally every other line is an ad now.
It is.
And it's really interesting. And for my wedding anniversary of 10 years, my wife got me a pair of golf clubs, and we got them off of Facebook, lightly used. And now every ad is like golf balls, golf towel, golf hat, golf shirt, golf shoes. It's like, I got everything I needed. Thanks so much. But then every now and then I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I like click on it. And now they're like, oh yeah, now we got him. And so it's like every other, this is a training. It helps your swing, especially if you have new clubs. I'm like, I might need that.
You might need that.
It's terrible, man, how they mess with us.
I
That's
feel like
awesome.
people, yeah, there's people listening that understand because it's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's everywhere
Yeah.
now.
Totally. Totally. So let's get into this topic on marriage. I gotta say, when we're talking about dating your spouse, I I in seeing this question and this topic and that we were going to talk about it, little convicted,
Yeah.
little like looking at my schedule and going,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's super important. And then going, but how often am I doing this? And so I think what you said about there being seasons, that's important
Mm-hmm.
because I do think there are seasons in your life where you're going to date the heck out of your spouse, and that's
Yeah.
awesome. I think there's other seasons where, man, it's really hard. I mean, like right now, we have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and like we got to have somebody watch our kids. Babysitters are incredibly expensive, dude.
Yeah.
These young, like teenage girls are out here making bank. Okay. I think that needs to be addressed first and foremost. All right. Like I'm sitting here like, how much an hour? Like, what do you want to make? It's unbelievable. Can I get your experience? Can I get some references? Like what's going on? But it's really, there's a lot of angles, a lot of ways to think through it. And I think what you said about there being different seasons is exactly right. I think what's important is that you and your spouse know what season you're in.
Right.
And because that's where the confusion gets. And so for me and my wife, we try to be really clear in communication of where we are. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. At the beginning of this year, we knew our 10-year anniversary was coming up. We knew it was going to be near Easter. And so we knew that we wanted to like go out to dinner for our 10-year anniversary. But the idea of going on some elaborate vacation or, even sneaking away for a couple days or what, like that was not going to happen. Not only because of Easter, but like I said, we have a 5-year-old, we have a 2-year-old. And we just said, all right, well, then we want to plan out. We want to try to push our vacation out. So like we're now going to do something in June, and we got childcare and we figured it all out. But from January to June, there's very little dating going on. I
Yeah.
think I can count 2 from January to June, 2. But between her job, my job, my job getting busier, her job getting busier, her sometimes being out of town for her job, me sometimes being away on the evenings for my job, the weekends being what they are, the kids having school and gymnastics, and we want to see the grandparents, and we want to do this and we want to do that, and we got to get to bed early, but we got to eat dinner, and like, man, if you're living that life where sometimes you're eating dinner at 4:45, 5 o'clock, and then you're putting them to bed at like you're starting the routine around 7:10. I don't know when you think you're going on a date.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, first and foremost, to go, all right, let's just say from the beginning that there's not like a right or wrong way here. But I think at the very foundation of it all, you and your spouse really need to be on the same page. Is this a season where you guys really need this and you need to make it a huge priority? Or is this a season where you guys have talked it out and you understand that this is a real big challenge right now, but you have something to look forward to down the line?
Yeah.
And so that's where I just wanted to start. I think you've got to be on the same page. If one of you thinks that they need to be dating a lot and the other one's like, no, we're good, that's where you get into some tough time.
Right. Or if you verbalize that, if you say, hey, I wish we could go on more dates. Like if your wife hears you say that and understands the time you're in where we just can't make it work right now. But if she hears your heart, then I think that opens up the communication. Well, what can we do? Right. It might be a money issue, right? Going on date nights is expensive. You mentioned just the babysitter expensive alone. And then if you're going to see a movie and then dinner, like you're talking about over $100 easily. And then you want me to do that every week? Like that's not feasible for time and money. And so the heart behind dating your spouse, I think, is really that time away, that time where did the things you did when you were dating, right? When it was all about them, you talked for hours on the phone, right? No, you hang up. No, you hang up, right? It's that mentality. And I think it happens with men more than women, where it's like, okay, now we're a thing, I can ease up, right? And you want to continue to pursue your spouse. And my
Yes.
mentor, Sean, always asks me, like, the first thing he asks me is like, are you finding date nights? You know, and it's like, he realizes as a counselor, as a pastor, that that's so important. So that's the
Yeah.
first thing he asks me. And so we as a married, as me as a married couple with my wife, and us as pastors, like, we have to understand that, first of all, marriages are a huge target of the enemy. Huge.
Yeah.
Especially in today's culture, right? And we could go into, that's a whole nother topic, but first of all, it's
Can
a
we
huge
do that
topic.
episode, please?
We could do that one. Yeah. But it's a huge target. And so understanding that alone means that we need to be on guard spiritually, both individually, and then as a couple, we have to be on guard. And so it's not just about the date night experience. It's about the relationship, first and foremost, with God. Like, as a couple, the ideal scenario is that you're both pursuing God. And then from that, together, you are one. But you both individually have to be pursuing God. Together, you have to be pursuing God. And then so you're on the same page in communication, both spiritually, both physically, both verbally. And then you can come to an understanding that, okay, maybe we can't do a date night more than once a month, but how can I still date my spouse throughout the day? How can I text them something, right, that makes them feel appreciated? How can I, you know, bring flowers home on my way home from work that might take 5-10 minutes, right? How can I, if I can't find a babysitter, how can we still put the kids to bed and then intentionally watch a movie together, maybe make something special for dessert, right? There are ways around that where oftentimes it's like, unless I do the thing, like, we love going to melting pots at the fondue place, you know, and in our minds, like, well, unless I go to melting pot every time, then it's not really a date. Like, we don't think that, but I'm just saying, like, if that's the example, that's going to be really hard to do, because that's usually like an anniversary, you know, type of experience. And so it's really about the heart behind it, and it's about making sure you're in front of it. And I think the next topic is like, how do you schedule this stuff? How do you make sure it's intentional? Because days turn into weeks turn into months, and before you realize it, okay, it's been 6 months and we haven't done anything.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, sometimes things change in like how you're dating your spouse, and then the heart behind it is important. I can't tell you how many times I'll just be honest. I hope that's okay with the listeners. I can't tell you how many times I've done something and the heart behind it was like, I hope I get sex out of this. That's not a good approach. It's a very immature approach. And so I've started learning, like, as I progress in understanding my wife and the season she's in, and in our different communication, the way that I can best support and date her and pursue her is very different than it used to be. Like, man, before we had kids, it was so easy. I mean, I just gotta be honest. It was so easy because it was all the stuff that was like fun to do and you like to do. We'll go out and eat. We got all the time in the world. We'll watch Friends reruns. We'll sit on the couch together. We'll make cookies. We'll order pizza. Like, you know, it was all like quality time. It was really great. Now, I mean, from a quality time standpoint, just the two of us, that comes after the kids have gone to bed. There might even still be a little bit of housework or a little bit of like actual work to be done. We're exhausted. We're exhausted. So how do I pursue my spouse? Well, I used to think that it was like, I'll just give her great compliments and, you know, tell her how great she is, how beautiful she is, all these things. And I think those are still important and she appreciates those. But like, one of the best things I can do is like, do a load of laundry. Empty the dishwasher. Like,
serving's your love language, huh?
Right. Serving is her love language, acts of service. So clean up after the kids. And if she's putting a kid down and comes downstairs and I've done none of that, and I'm like sitting on the couch and enjoying it, like, that's not really a great way to pursue your wife. So I think in that pursuit, find out in the season that your spouse is in, find out what's valuable to them. What means a lot to your spouse in this season? Whatever that is needs to mean a lot to you.
That's right.
It just does. And so I think, again, communication. How can I learn what's valuable to my spouse? recognizing that what's valuable now might not be valuable a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So I need to understand in each time we're talking, what's valuable to them. And then as I discover what's valuable to them, how can that become valuable to me? And so that's become my prayer. Like, God, help me see what my wife sees. Help me value what my wife values, even if she hasn't told me, if she's holding something back from telling me what's valuable to her or what she really wishes that I would do. Can you expose me to that? Can you let me in on that? Can you give me the passion to do that? Can you give me the energy and the strength at 10 p.m. at night to do some things like that? So I think that's really valuable. And then how do you prioritize, date night? Again, for me, it's, you just got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like literally it's not going to her and being like, hey, do you think we should do date night? Maybe this date, what do you have going on? Like, it's less that. And it's more like, hey, I've talked to my parents. They're going to take the kids at this time and we're going to dinner at this time and be ready at this time.
Yeah.
And just handling it, because again, she's a mom. Our kids are at a very special age right now where they are delightful, but they also present a lot of questions and a lot of energy, and it's just physically draining. So she has a very physically and mental draining job. Kids are very physically and mentally draining. And then by the time she has time to think about anything else, she's exhausted. So me being able to go, I'm just going to run with this. I'm going to plan it out and we're going to do it. Not only serves her, but sets her up to be in a position where she's excited about it.
Yeah.
If I'm relying on her to plan it, or if I'm like really wanting her to like get in on this with me, now's not the season for that.
Yeah.
So again, like understanding what does she need from me? And then how can I do that? But even in that, like I said, January to June, like two, so in 6 months, we've had 2 very intentional moments. We've had an anniversary, so we can go 3 there. And now we've got a trip lined up in June without the kids. Thank you, Jesus. Okay. And so this is the season we're in. Yeah. And I'm with you, man. I've heard the pastors get up on stage every Friday night. Needs to be a date night. Bro, how much money are you making for real?
Right. I know.
Like, I don't have that kind of flow. Yeah. I don't have that kind of like the child care, the grandparents, the timing. Like, if we leave by the time she gets done with work and we have childcare, the amount of money of childcare getting back home, and you still got to put the kids to bed when you get back home. You got to deal with the kid. It's just so much going on. So I really don't prescribe to like you said, there's not like a certain method. There's not a certain way, but at the very foundation, you and your wife, you and your husband, whatever, like you've got to be on the same page.
Yeah. And I think if you're a schedule follower, get it on the schedule, right? Maybe whatever you commit to, we're going to have a date night once a month, every other week. Put it on there ahead of time. You may not have all the details, but when you see it coming up, set a reminder a week out. Oh yeah, date night's coming up. I need to start planning it. Like, if you're someone that if it's on your schedule, you're going to do it, put the things that matter to you on your schedule. We talked about this before on scheduling out prayer time or time in the Bible. Do it with your spouse too. Like we started realizing, I need to pray more with my spouse. Well, just recently in the last 6 months, we're like, why don't we get it on the schedule? Like, if we're going to have time of prayer, let's in time of reading, we read a book together. We pray together. It'd be great to pray every day. Like, don't get me wrong, not feasible. Like where we're at right now, maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll put on the schedule every day, but just be realistic, right? Don't have these lofty goals that you're going to fail and then feel bad about, but have realistic goals that you can achieve and then maybe build upon for once you're out of this season in your life. And when you have young kids, like it's so tough, but then once you get older and your kids are older, they're doing their own thing. Like maybe you can do it. I know couples that do it every week, have the date night and they go out every week. They don't, not something extravagant or expensive, but they still find that time on a Friday night or whatever to do that. And that's fine. And I think the heart behind the question that we received was, how do you keep from getting date nights to become rote, to become just going through the motions? And that's maybe a different layer to this. And maybe you and I aren't the ones qualified to talk about that, but because we're not at the point where they become, it's like, oh, we get to, now it's like once every few months. But
yeah,
I just think once you're in that season where then you're able to do it more, then it's like anything. Like, how do I get from going to the gym to become rote and going through the motions? How do I get from reading my Bible to become that way? I think you do it because it's good for you, right?
right.
You do it anyway, even if it's not this magical anniversary style moment of a date night.
Right.
Like, you still do it because you're comfortable and you want to be with that person and you want to hear from them. And even if you go out and eat and don't say much, like, you're still doing it, right?
Correct.
And I referenced it earlier. If you're a married couple and have not read The 5 Love Languages, do it, because that book is so
it's awesome,
crucial to understanding your spouse and what they want to receive from you. And Gary Chapman also has a book called The 4 Seasons of Marriage, I believe. We read that a while ago, and it goes through, like, the spring, summer, fall, winter of your marriage, and how there's different cycles to your marriage. When you're, you got the honeymoon phase, and then you're like, oh, we got the trials of life phase.
Year 7.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So understanding that too, that if you're not feeling those goosebumps or whatever, if you're newer in your marriage and it's like, well, how come it's like year 4 or 5 and we're dealing with this? Like, that's normal, right? Like, there's plenty of resources. Like, we try to read a book together as a couple, like a devotional or something like that. There's other things like that we do as far as like prayer goes, as far as family devotions time, to kind of keep that fire going spiritually. But as far as like just time together, like, that's something that you have to figure out and be on the same page about, because it's not like, oh, I just need to do XYZ because Drew and Tim say so. No, like, your spouse better than we do. And so communication is one of those things that is missing in many marriages, I feel. And you assume that they know what you're feeling or what your intentions are, but unless you verbalize it, we know as guys that can get us into a lot of problems, because no spouse can read each other's mind. Right. And so the more that you're upfront about saying, I want this to happen in our marriage, it's nothing against you that you're not doing it. It's just, as us together, I want us to get to this point, whatever that point will be. I wish that we could pray more. I wish that we could go on date nights every week. Maybe we can't get there yet, but just know that I care enough about you that I want this marriage to stay through. By the time our kids are up and out, I want to have someone that I want to be with for another 20, 30, 40 years, right? Because too often you go through it just for the kids, and then by the time they're up and out, you're living with a stranger. And that's happened many times, and that's not what I want from my marriage. I know that that's never what you intend, but it's still something that happens because you're not intentional.
Absolutely. And know this too. Whatever you do, whatever the habit is, not just date night, but in this pursuit of your spouse, it's effort. Like it's effort, it's time, it's thought. It might take you a little while to build that habit and build that thought process in. Cause like you said, man, sometimes you're just in this habit of like, all right, what do I have to do today? I need to get all these things done. Today looks a lot like it did yesterday, a lot like the day before, a lot like that. And you just get in this routine. And then one day you're like you said, the kids are out and you're like, oh, cool. I have this roommate that's a completely different person than the person I married, because it's been decades. And now I've got to figure out how to handle this. And now I'm going into a new phase of life with kids outside the house, and they are too. How do I manage that? Because now we've got 2 different people going through a new thing in life. And that's why so many, divorces and split ups and separations happen in that phase. So whatever you're going to do, you need to recognize that there might be a time where it really is like a little bit of a like added thing that you got to do if you want the blessing that comes with it.
That's right.
Like, if you don't, it's like you said, it's like reading your Bible. Like, I want to know more what God says about me. I want to, grow in my faith. Cool. How's your alone time?
That's right.
How's your quiet time? How's your prayer life? Oh, I wish our marriage was better. Cool. How's your alone time? How's your prayer life? Like, how much are you connecting? How much are you pursuing? I will say this. I really got into, I still do a little bit, but now it's more of like, in order to And now it's more like a habit. Like I just think through it. But in order to build the habit, I used to have a journal that was all dedicated towards gratitude. And so before I would go to sleep for a little while, I would write down things I was thankful for. And then I realized that because I was so like sleepy and just ready to go to bed that I would skip it. So then I put it into the morning. So I started making list of things I'm grateful for in the morning, first thing. And I would do it. I would get up, I'd take a shower, I'd get ready for the gym. And before I would even leave the bathroom counter, I would write down things I was thankful for. And what I realized is every morning I would mention my family. Every morning I'd mention my wife. Every morning I'd mention my kids. And so once I got in that habit of thought, I was like, I wonder how I could now take this time and kind of double down on it. And how could I take some of these things that I'm writing down, some of these things I'm grateful for, and actually express that? So I got a whole stack of sticky notes and put it on my bathroom counter and a pen. And every morning I'm up early. I'm up before everybody else. And I'll just write a little something that I'm grateful for. When it comes to Brent, before I leave, put that sticky note down on her nightstand. And then I head out to the gym. And when she wakes up in the morning, the first thing she has is a sticky note. Now, sometimes I forget and she wakes up in the morning and she looks and the first thing she has is nothing. Right. And so, but it's building the habit of gratitude. It's letting her know that, I appreciate things. And what I know is that like the first 3 mornings, that was so much fun. It was so cool because I was like, oh, she's going to see it. By morning, like 15, I'm like, what do I write? Like I've already said that I'm thankful for like how great she is and how much she supports me and how much she loves me and her heart and her mind and her beauty. And like, I feel like I've given her every compliment I can give her. And so now I'm like racking my brain before I even go to the gym. Like, what do I write? And so my point is, however you're pursuing, there's going to have to be some habits around it. There's going to be some moments where you're like, I don't even know how to keep doing this. It's going to take some time. And then you might need to shift and go, all right, well, I've kind of like let the sticky notes run its course. Maybe I need to shift to something else. So no idea is really off limits, but be consistent in what you do, be consistent in the intentionality, but know that like the tool might have to shift and the way that you express it might have to shift as you go. Yeah. And as we talk about keeping our eyes on Jesus, it's cool that the Bible is not silent on the issue of marriage. Right. Oftentimes it's such a perfect picture, first of Christ in the church, but also as submission and also love. And, oftentimes the submit to your husband's verse gets used and sometimes wives pull against that. But when you read it in context, I'm going to read it in Ephesians 5:22 and on, it's really beautiful. And so Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your husbands as you do the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything, right? And that's fine in and of itself. But when you put it together with the next part, husbands love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one has ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ does the church, for we are members of his body. And it goes on. This is a profound mystery, as Christ is for the church. This is such a beautiful picture of both parties in this. And so just remember that, husbands loving your wife is not that, I'm the man and she has to submit to me. Submit to me. Yeah. Like you give up your body to her because you love her. You want her to become holy and blameless as Christ did the church. And so you will give up everything for her. And I feel that picture often gets misconstrued in today's culture. And when we talk about loving your spouse and doing things for them, it's really about the heart of the matter, about what do they, that's why learning love languages is so important, because it's okay, I want to give you gifts, which is for me and my spouse, my wife, Jamie, like I want to give her gifts, but that's not her love language. Her love language is physical touch and time and quality time.
And so if I just want to shower her with gifts, she's like, it's a waste of money. What are you doing? But
Yep.
and some other people might be like, that's great. I wanted a new Coach purse. Right. And so it really just depends. I think another caveat to this I want to address too is what happens when there's a mixed marriage, right? Of not a spiritually mixed, where one person's following Christ and the other one is not.
Yeah.
And that is a tough layer to this.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? What would you say for those listening that might be in that?
Well, from which standpoint? from which side? I mean, if
I'd
you're
say let's say with dating your spouse, but also like as we're talking spiritually, being in communion with them, and then not feeling, because if you're not together spiritually, you're going to feel distant from them spiritually.
Yeah.
So then how do you go through maybe the motions of date night or life when they're not on the same page spiritually? What kinds of things as a spouse praying and interceding for your mate should you be doing as you're waiting on the Lord to maybe break through to them?
Yeah. So one, like you said, as you're waiting on the Lord to break through to them, there are times where I strongly believe that that you as the spouse will be the person to break through and have the Lord be seen through you. There are other times where I'm like, maybe that won't be you, but either way, regardless of what the plan is, you have an opportunity to be the real deal here. And so I would encourage you not to shy away, not to certainly don't get into the point where, every conversation you have, you're trying to push your faith onto someone.
Yeah.
Because as we know, anybody can stand up and say they are something, but it's in their actions and it's in how they live their life that really the testimony can be seen out. So my encouragement to that situation would be, you need to get really, really connected with Jesus. You need to be praying for your spouse just all the time.
Yeah.
Just all the time. And then you need to, in every opportunity, do your best to show the love of Jesus. And so that means like you're going to live your life not separated from them, but there are going to be moments where you are going to separate yourself to go do something that's based on what you believe.
Yeah.
And so that might be church. I know so many people that are like, oh, well, I would come to church, but my husband doesn't come. I would come to church, but my wife doesn't come. Well, I'll tell you this, I got just as many stories that are like, my husband didn't used to come, but now he does.
Yeah.
My wife didn't used to come, but now she does. And it's because they witnessed this. And I love when this happens, by the way, with students. When students get plugged into ministry, their parents aren't Christians. Yes. And then the students start bringing the parents. Oh,
that's awesome.
It's like the most wonderful, beautiful thing ever. So I would just encourage you, if you're in that position, you need to be really connected with Christ. You need to be praying for your spouse. And any opportunity you have to show them the love of Jesus, not necessarily tell them what they should be doing, right?
Yeah.
But show them the love of Jesus. I just believe that over time speaks just volumes.
Yes.
over any kind of pressure to get in line or get on board.
Yeah.
So
I would say too, it's not just one doesn't believe in Christ, like you're talking about it. That's one example, but another example would be, we're not on the same page spiritually, where one is passionate for God right now, like in the word every day, hungry for God, and the other one's not. Like they still believe in Jesus, right? But they're just not really into that right now. It's a season of life. Maybe there's been a trial, maybe there's grief and loss, and so they're trying to process that, and so they're not on the same page. There's really no difference in the prescription than what you said, right? It's that, I wish my husband or my wife would be as passionate as I am for Jesus. Well, the same thing, do the things that you need to do,
Right.
maybe sometimes without them, maybe if it's an extra prayer night or something at church and you want to go and they don't, right? Do it, go to it.
Yep.
Like, be that example and pursue. Don't back up. Don't lower your zeal for God just because someone else is not, but also don't expect them to be at that level immediately. Right.
Yep.
Like, pray for them, show them, like you said, the love of Christ through your actions. Don't demean them. Don't ridicule them. Don't say, I wish you were like this,
Sure. Sure.
because then you're just pushing them away further, I think, right?
Yeah. And another thing I'll add to that, when they do lead out, like, because we might be talking to the person right now that's going, that's what I've been telling my wife, or that's what I've been telling my husband. Okay. If we're talking to the person that's like really the spiritual leader of the household right now, great. Lead out. You might be uncomfortable. You might have to do something that might mean you're like, hey, before we do dinner, I know we've never done this, I'm just going to pray. But let me also talk to the person that maybe isn't the spiritual leader in the household.
Yeah.
When the other person takes a step of faith and tries to be bold and tries to lead out and tries to celebrate it. Don't, oh my gosh.
Well, it's about time.
Don't be that.
It's about time. Yeah.
That was awkward.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? Don't do that.
Right.
Don't do that. Like, we need to celebrate it, because especially, I believe this, especially for men a lot of times will not lead out because they're worried that they will look a certain way, or they're already so insecure about doing it because they don't necessarily know exactly how, because this behavior wasn't modeled for them by their dad.
Yeah, exactly.
And what will destroy them is a wife who will go, okay, you're going to teach the Bible, you're going to read scripture, you're going to pray, that will absolutely just tear them apart. So let me encourage husbands out there, lead.
Yeah.
Try something. Just try it. I know it's weird. I know it's uncomfortable. I know your kids might be like, whoa, Dad, what are you doing? I get it. Try something. And then for all the wives out there, like, oh man, just be encouraging and build them up as bad as it may be.
Be consistent.
Celebrate it.
Don't just do it once and then be like, oh, I tried, it didn't work. Right. To be consistent. Like, prayer is one of those things you got to keep doing. You got to keep pushing through. And I've seen this happen where the man is not leading the family. And so the wife does it, right? They have to, because there's a gap. And so they have to fill the gap. They have to be the spiritual head. And so they're taking the family to the church. They're doing Bible studies. They're praying, right? And maybe there's this epiphany, like we saw this at our men's retreat recently, where, okay, now the men want to come lead. Well, now you have a tough thing, because you have the woman who's been leading, the man who's like, all right, I kind of want to do that, but I don't know how, because she's already doing all these things. And so you have to have two things. You have to have the man that's willing to step forward in those uncomfortable things. And you have to have the woman that's saying, okay, I will now lower what I've been doing so that the man can be the spiritual head of the family. And that's a tough thing to do. I wouldn't do it alone. I would definitely receive encouragement and support, and maybe counseling if you need to, if you're in that position. And it could be a tricky thing to navigate. So we kind of went from date night to spiritual head of the household, which is awesome, but it's also, it's all intertwined. I think, maybe you're not having date nights because there is a clash of something spiritual happening in the family. And so you need to pray into that first. You need to fix maybe the spiritual problem before you look at the physical date night issue, right? Or it's just a time issue. It's just a time issue, season of life. We talked about that already. Only your marriage, but don't shy away from the tough things that need to be brought to light, I would say.
I will say one thing that my wife and I have discovered works for us is like card games. So we don't have date nights, but there will be nights where the kids got to bed a little early. It's like 9:15. We're both downstairs. It's quiet. Just be like, you want to play some cards? You want to play rummy, or you want to play cribbage? By the way, if you don't know what cribbage is, you need to go You need to go do that.
We'll
That's
do an
cool.
We'll do an episode on cribbage.
Yep, absolutely. That's spiritual formation, cribbage.
Yeah.
So we figured out that, like, you know what, just sitting at the kitchen table, phones away from us, dealing cards, some of the best conversations happen then. And then if it's a beautiful day, my wife works from home. If maybe I've got a afternoon with some time, you want to go on a walk? You want to just go walking around the neighborhood? Like, we're just going to be outside for 20 minutes, but we don't have our phones. We're not working. And some of our best conversations, our best ideas, our best, celebrations of each other and our children are just playing cards and walking around the neighborhood. And it's those little connections, those little points that I think can make a big difference in your marriage.
Yeah, for sure. And like you alluded to before, if you're not doing some of these things, especially as men, if you're ignoring your wife all day and then you expect something to happen at night, you got to check yourself, because that's not how this works. It's a mutual thing. Maybe you're young in the marriage, and maybe I'm helping some guys right now listening who don't know the answer, but that's what you got to do, right? It's a mutual thing. You got to respect each other, love each other throughout the day. It's not just about that one act, right? It's so much more.
Absolutely.
It's a much more integration as a marriage couple with the family, spiritual, emotional, and not just physical. So we'll leave it on that note. Maybe that could be another episode, but thank you again for the questions. Eyes on Jesus podcast community. Send us your questions. You can also email us at discerningdad@outlook.com. And until next time, go with God, grow in discernment, and keep your eyes on Jesus.